Imagine you go to sleep at night, and in the morning, every car in the world is already electric. No gasoline, no diesel, none of the familiar engine noise on the streets. You might think, here it is, the perfect eco-friendly world. But in reality, true chaos will begin within the very first hours. Because replacing all cars with electric vehicles overnight is not just an eco-friendly upgrade. It is a global shock to the entire planet. In the morning. And so, morning breaks. People step out of their homes, press the button on their key fobs, open their car doors, and find that they are no longer facing their familiar car with a gas tank, but an electric vehicle. At first glance, it all looks like a miracle. No exhaust fumes, no smell of gasoline, no rumble of engines in traffic jams. Cities literally become quieter overnight. But there is one problem. The world is not ready for this. Because electric vehicles are not just different cars. It is a completely different infrastructure. And this is where the most interesting part begins. Panic at the gas stations. The first to take the hit are the gas stations. If the entire country, and then the whole world, suddenly switches to electric vehicles, regular gas stations instantly lose their purpose. People drive to the gas station out of habit to fill up the tank. But a surprise awaits them there. Instead of fuel, they need a charge. And there are not enough charging stations for everyone. And this is where a very everyday, yet highly serious problem arises. A person can't just pull in and be back on the road in 3 minutes, like they could with gasoline. An electric car needs time to charge. Sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes longer. This means that all of our familiar transportation routines begin to restructure themselves on the fly. The power grid. But the biggest hit will be taken not by the road network, but by the power grid. If millions of cars start charging simultaneously, the power grid simply won't be able to handle such a load. Imagine the entire city coming home after work, turning on the lights, the air conditioner, the kettle, and also plugging their cars in to charge. This is a colossal consumption of energy. Power plants will have to generate much more electricity than before. Substations, cables, and transformers. All of this must also withstand the new load. And here, several scenarios are possible at once. In some places, the grid will simply overload. In others, electricity rates will rise. And in some areas, blackouts will begin because the infrastructure won't have time to adapt. So the irony is that the eco-friendly future might begin with an electricity shortage. The roads. Everything will change on the roads as well. Electric vehicles are typically quieter, smoother, and accelerate faster, which means driving will become less noisy and more comfortable. But with a mass transition, a new kind of traffic jam will emerge. Not a jam of cars on the road, but of people waiting to charge. Lines will form at charging stations, much like the queues at gas stations in small towns once did. People will start planning their trips not just around the route, but around the availability of an open charger. And this means the city map will change. Parking spots near shopping malls, offices, and residential buildings will become especially valuable. Everyone will be looking for places where they can not just park their car, but manage to feed it with electricity. The logistics. But the real test will come not for passenger cars, but for freight transport. Because the whole world is held together not just by personal vehicles, but by trucks, big rigs, delivery, and logistics. If they too become electric overnight, the world will face a massive challenge. Trucks transport food, medicine, clothes, electronics, building materials. Basically everything. And if their charging isn't fast enough, the delivery of goods will slow down, which means disruptions could start in stores, warehouses, and supply chains. It will be especially tough for those regions with vast distances and almost no charging infrastructure. There, the electric revolution could very quickly turn into a transportation crisis. The good news. But now, the good news. Cities will begin to breathe easier. Almost immediately, exhaust levels will drop, the air will become cleaner, and the streets quieter. A portion of the noise we've become so accustomed to that we no longer even notice it will simply disappear. In some neighborhoods, people will even feel as if the city has become a completely different place. Less vibration, less exhaust smell, less constant hum. Those who live near major highways will notice this the most. For them, the transition to electric transport could become a huge improvement in their quality of life. The economy. And then comes the blow to the global economy. If all cars become electric, the demand for gasoline and diesel will plummet. This will hit the oil industry, gas stations, fuel logistics, and the thousands of companies whose livelihoods revolve around automotive fuel. Oil prices could drop significantly. Some countries that depend on oil exports will face a severe economic crisis. Others, conversely, will accelerate their investments in electricity, batteries, and renewable energy. On the flip side, the demand for lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper, and other materials needed for batteries will skyrocket. In other words, the world will simply switch from one dependency to another. The final. So what will happen if all cars become electric overnight? Initially, chaos, panic, and a massive strain on the power grids. But in the long run, cleaner air, quieter cities, and a more modern world of transportation. Meaning, this isn't a magical solution to all problems, but a massive transition that requires preparation. And the sooner humanity begins it, the less painful it will be. What do you think? Is the world ready for such a transition, or is it too drastic a change? Let me know in the comments, and if you'd like, I can make a continuation in this format.